Hey everybody, welcome back to our podcast. Let's talk about it. A podcast brought to you by the Lesniak Institute for American Leadership. We are a nonprofit located in Union, New Jersey,
here on Kane University's campus. We're your hosts. My name is Felipe.
And I'm Claudia.
And we are here with a very special guest.
Hi, everyone.
So, Uma Sofia Srivastava is the 17-year-old author and illustrator of the multilingual children's book, The White Jaguar, and the first Mexican Indian first-generation Miss Teen USA. She is a champion for children's education, nutrition, and healthcare, working closely with organizations such as the Lotus Petal Foundation, Bridge of Books, Smile Train, and Vote.org to improve the lives of children in the U.S. and worldwide. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited about this conversation.
We're so happy that you were excited to come.
Yes.
That makes us so happy.
Right?
So that is quite the resume you have already, and you're so young. Can you talk a little bit about, to start us off, about how you got into the world of advocacy?
Well, growing up, my parents really instilled in me that, giving back was so important. And I recognize that from a young age as well, because I always loved going to school. I was a little nerd. And for me, that was kind of my escape sometimes, because socially there was like a little bit of a struggle. Since I'm half Indian, half Mexican, I didn't always feel like I had a niche. And so it felt kind of difficult at times to reconcile that with like me going to school. And so I did put myself into my studies, and then I realized, like, as I got older, not everyone had even the chance to, read and explore their imagination and explore interests that they like in the same way that I was allowed to. So growing up, I was very exposed to the Lotus Petal Foundation, which my parents were a large part of, just through family friends. And I have seen how that charity has really grown from grassroots to where it started out with 6 kids in an arcade to now that first student that was ever in the Lotus Petal Foundation school. She's now a doctor and studying to become a surgeon, and now they have over 100,000 kids on the digital platform in rural areas of India, and they're like currently building what is supposed to become the first largest nonprofit school in India with over 20,000 kids.
Wow.
So to see that progression growing up, that really just kind of like motivated me, that it really does take one person to decide, listen, this is something that is important to me. And Lotus Petal does put a lot of focus on education of kids. They all come from slums of India, and they have to work hard to find a position at the school. And you see how deeply the kids care for their studies and how the school takes care of their mental well-being, like promotes art and sciences, and all of that just is really inspiring to me. And I guess that's kind of how I got into, children's education being such a big part, because it was such a huge part of my life. And also I saw like that every child deserves to have that. So yeah, that's how I started with them. And as I got older, obviously, like, I wasn't just attending meetings. I asked if I could have more of like a leadership role. And then when I first started competing for the pageant, which was my freshman year, I competed for Miss New Jersey Teen USA. I decided that children's education would be my focus, because a lot of the times I think with beauty pageants, and even I had this kind of inclination to think this way. It's like we see what we see on television, that it's like all about looks. And I can't lie, there is a certain facet of that world that is certainly like geared towards that. But what I knew, and my intention going into that, was really like the charitable aspect of that. And I knew that, there were girls like me who were going to compete that cared more about that, and proving that you could be both. You didn't have to just pick one. You could, have these interests of like glitz and glam, but also like be a deeply caring person. And I think in this world of social media, like, you guys run a podcast, what it means to like grab people's attention. You have to do that. And then it also matters like the meaning and the value behind what you're saying. So that like attention grab is kind of what gets people in, but your passion and your care for like these causes is what makes people stay. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've learned on this journey. And I applied that throughout everything that I did, as I, when I ended up winning Miss New Jersey Teen USA, I realized like, why am I not involved in something similar in New Jersey? Because I know a huge problem is that there's a lot of there's a big socioeconomic divide when it comes to education with the public schools, like places where I live and places like, you know, inner cities where kids can't even afford their textbooks. So I partnered with a local organization in New Jersey called the Bridget Books Foundation, became very close to Abby Daly, the founder, who is just a wonderful person. And again, just like Kushal Chakravorty, the founder of Lotus Petal Foundation, I was able to learn from this amazing woman how she was started all of this and became part of the cause. I helped her, you know, raise books for my school and then the community, working with churches and organizations as I was, you know, Miss New Jersey and then Miss Teen USA. So now we've been working together for three years. And honestly, every time I go to like a book fair or a free book giveaway and I see a kid say that, oh my God, like I've always wanted this book, or this is my first book that I'll ever own. It makes me want to cry, but in the best way, because, you know, you really are, it's not the impact of like, I'm reaching 1,000 people, but it's like changing one person's life. And then that ripple effect of that kid will grow up with that imagination and that love for fantasy that I had as a little kid, and who knows where that kid will be in 10 years and like be giving it back and paying it forward, you know? So I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think like one of the first things you said was that what kind of brought you into the advocacy world was your parents, right?
Yeah.
And I could relate to you because my parents also kind of showed me like the nonprofit world, and eventually that's the career path I chose, and that's how I ended up here. I think it's so important to mention that like our generation is going to be really crucial in like teaching our next generation
Very
on
true.
how to constantly be involved and, you know, be advocates for and stand up for what they believe in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. You know, our generation and like younger generations, they're, because of social media, they're aware of so many more problems that are going on, and
Yeah.
they see stuff that they care about because of that. So they definitely want to get more involved than maybe generations before who weren't doing everything that you're doing at a young age and, you know, doing it way further in life. So it definitely helps to get, you know, started off a little bit earlier, and we're like trying to help along with that too. So it's super cool that you've had this journey all by yourself, kind of.
Thank you. I mean, I will say though, like I have a really good support system. I mean, I am inspired every day by my parents because both of them are immigrants. You know, I'm first generation in this country, and I think growing up with that also, like, I had a sense of privilege and I knew that I did. So that also factored into, you know, it's not just something like I want to give back. It's like I need to give back because it's important. You know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for their hard work, and I like deserve to, you know, feed that back into the community that I live in. And I think, like you said, the Lesniak Institute is so, things like this for young people are so crucial because a lot of the time, like civil work and, you know, community service, I feel like isn't emphasized that much anymore, even though like social media exposes us to all of these issues that we care about. Because there's also this, like the downside of it is, oh, you know, you compare yourself to people or organizations and you're like, I'm just one person, what can I do? But it's like I was saying with the kids, like having that one-on-one interaction and changing one life, you know, if you sit there and do nothing, there's a difference, you know, you won't be making that like little bit of a difference, and that pays forward, you know.
Have you heard of the term slacktivism?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so slacktivism, we love talking about this now.
Okay, educate me.
So slacktivism is kind of like social media activism. It's when you're caring about an issue and you say you care about an issue and like you like a video or you repost it and you're like, that's it, I did my part, I'm raising awareness, I am an activist. Whereas, you know, going out there and volunteering at a local community event or partnering with a nonprofit or, you know, taking those steps in real life is actual activism. So
Yeah,
a lot
that's
of the
very true.
times, like what you were saying, people kind of fall into this role on social media that there is a downside to it. Yeah, they're more aware of issues, but they're also not doing anything about it.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely like, I see that. And, you know, having been in like the pageant space, you know, a lot of the girls that I met were so passionate about their causes, and it really did feel great to be surrounded by other women who were trailblazers and passionate about so many different things. But then there was also this sense of like, you know, competition, and that adds a layer of, you know, like I always knew that when I went into whatever, if I won or lost, I was going to continue doing what I was doing. And when I stepped down, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I didn't lose per se, but, you know, I realized much earlier than, when I decided to give up the title, that it wasn't the title that mattered, because most of my time as like, this public figure, it was just me reaching out to people and being proactive. Like you say, like in college, it's the same thing. I'm applying right now, I'm a senior. I know that you have to be proactive about things. And that's kind of what the title was. Like, it was just me reaching out to schools, me reaching out to local organizations. And I realized I could do that on my own anyways, So that was a huge part of the journey too, is just realizing how much one person can do as long as you like work hard at it, because it's not going to come easy, of course, when you're dealing with issues like that are so entrenched politically and all this red tape that is around nowadays. But like we still have voices even as young people, and I think like we deserve to use them.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you kind of mentioned your time in the pageant world. Would you say that is kind of like the turning point you had in your journey as an advocate, or was it something else? Like, what was that one moment that you were like, yes, this is like, I am now an advocate, I am now going to put myself out there and do this?
I think honestly my book. So I wrote my book before the pageant because, when you sign up for the pageant, you have to sign this contract. And if you win, they own your like material and everything that you create for like in perpetuity. Wow, and I knew, so I knew that I wanted,
that doesn't sound fair.
Well, there's a lot of things there. But
right.
I mean, I guess like just to, like saying all that, it was just to say that, I had this idea for so long to create a children's book. I grew up, my mom was an art teacher, so I grew up like arts and crafts, love illustration, and I loved writing. And I just, it was hard for me sometimes because I mentioned like I didn't always find that niche for myself, and I felt very isolated growing up. And, that's why I care so much about youth mental health, because it's something that I've been through as well. And I know it's not easy to deal with alone. So, all of that kind of factored into this book, this idea that I've had for such a long time. And that crux, like pivotal moment before I went to the national pageant, because to be quite honest with you, before I went to the pageant, I was like, no, I'm not going to win this, because I was one of the youngest contestants. I had little to no prior experience with pageantry, and some of these girls have been like dedicating their entire lives to this. I'm like, oh my God, like what am I even doing here? So I really just went with the intention that I'm going to, like get on stage, be an advocate for the things that I care about, and it'll be what it'll be. And so when I ended up winning, I was so excited. Now I published my book before I was Miss Teen USA. I'm going to go all around the country and read this book. And when that didn't pan out, and I started to ask myself like, I would be able to achieve more without the title than I'm currently doing. Mm-hmm. And I gave it up, and that's exactly what I did. Like I was able to travel more. I did reach more states than I probably would have if I stayed with the title. And, like that experience was, I guess, just realizing that, the title did help me reach more people, and it for sure, like, made certain things easier. But when I stepped down, it's like my entire life changed for the better, because I got to do so many incredible things this past year just by like reaching out to people that I wouldn't have. Like one such thing is like, I'm really proud of this is, so I went to the Girl Up USA Summit in July. I was invited to speak as the keynote, and they're under the UN Foundation. And it was great to, have that, again, girl on girl environment where it's like empowering and uplifting other women. But I met a lady there who was a documentary filmmaker, and she took an interest in my book, and then she invited me in November to the Paramount Picture Lot for an award ceremony where I won a Young Activist Award. Wow. And that to me was like incredible, because there was this moment where I was like, oh well, now that I'm not Miss Teen USA and I don't have this traction, even though I had like the news traction of me stepping down, I wanted the focus to be on my book, and unfortunately the focus was somewhere else. So it's like, how can I like move forward with this? Because I know that children resonate with this book. I've seen how, kids not only of different racial backgrounds, but kids with disabilities, kids who have felt alienated in their school's environments. Like I'll go to the school and read this book to them, and they'll, in that maybe 2 hours I spent them, I've had kids come to me and open up to me about things that are, really, really close to their heart, and that I feel so grateful that they felt like they could share that with me. So that was a concern when I wrote my book, is like, is anyone going to relate to this? Yeah. But now that I know that it's such a powerful message, and I've seen that, I was kind of concerned, like, oh, well, how am I going to get it out there? But, you know, things like this just keep me going. That it's not even the award, but it's like the fact that people are able to like resonate with that message. And I think it's very important in this, you know, climate where, you know, we're kind of pushing people away instead of bringing people together. So that's kind of what I hope to do, you know, like bring people closer together again, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, your book, it teaches people to embrace their individualism, right?
Yes.
Like how unique they are. What kind of inspired you? You kind of spoke about it a little bit, but, you know, it's kind of a commitment to write a book.
Yeah.
Right? Any type of book, it's a commitment. Senator Lesniak has like 3 books. I think it took him like a while to write like every one of them. So what made you realize like I need to do this? Like I need to commit my time in it, like, you know, your effort, whatever, into doing this project?
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, it had been kind of like this fluid idea bouncing around in my mind. I knew that, you know, every time that I went to a conference, like, and I spoke at NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, like here in New Jersey, and I shared about my story, and, you know, like when I talked about like bullying and self-confidence, like it just, I felt like I could do more. And I wanted to, you know, talk about it with kids in a way that they would understand and not feel like they're being talked down at. Because I think like a lot of the time, you know, even I find myself like going to elementary schools and I realize, you know, when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't like have wanted, you know, this like baby talk at me. Like they think that they're in charge, and they are in charge. They're in charge of their lives. And that's, you know, the point that I wanted to have across. So essentially the story is like based on, you know, how I felt. It's a little white jaguar, and my dad calls me his baby jaguar, so that's where that came from. And she has a different coat than the other jaguars, and, you know, they're not very inclusive of her. And she's separated from her parents at the beginning. And, you know, when I was in school, even though my parents were always very supportive for me, I felt isolated from everyone because I was like, I'm so embarrassed that I'm going through. It must be me that's the problem, right? So the whole book is like, no, it's not you that's the problem. You just need to like accept what makes you different. And she meets the little white jaguar Nieve, meets friends that have like quirks too. So like a chameleon, she changes colors. This big bad scary wolf who's like actually the protector of the animal sanctuary that they're at. So it's like, you know, appearances aren't everything, but you have to like embrace what makes you unique, because that's essentially what I've been able to connect with people about. Like this whole journey has taught me that, you know, I don't have to, you know, resent where I've come from, and I don't have to resent the things that make me special, because it's actually been the connector to other people and how I've been able to relate to kids and adults and, you know, like kind of create this brand of like everyone belongs. You know, you don't have to wait for someone to make you feel like you belong. You create your own space. And with the White Jaguar, I feel like I created my own space and like let kids who felt similar ways create their own spaces where they feel comfortable with their background, comfortable with what makes them different, you know?
Yeah.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, seriously, I do think like every child needs to I would love if every child read your book, but they need to know like their individualism, like what makes them unique could sometimes be like their superpower, like what unites people together.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of the whole point of the book, right?
Yeah.
That's honestly, I love that you just described it. I would love to spread, you know, more information about your book. Like, where can people get the book? How can someone read it?
So currently right now it's online at Barnes & Nobles. So if you look up the White Jaguar and my name, like it'll come up on barnesandnobles.com. I am trying to at least get it into like local bookstores, but you know, again, it's like a fight like with the connections and whatnot. So hopefully I'll be able to do that, you know, maybe in college, like kind of work on that a little bit more. But yeah, I think like also, you know, you asked me like if it was like a really like big effort, and yes, it was an effort to write the book, but you know, everyone's always surprised it took me like 3 months to write and illustrate it. It's like 34 pages.
Oh, you illustrated it?
Yes, yeah, I illustrated it.
That's
I wish
crazy.
I had a copy, guys. You know, I forgot.
You
Uma
know,
forgot today.
We're gonna put all the info of your book everywhere in the description, wherever, so people could get
Thank
it.
you.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna take a quick little commercial break because we need to reset the camera.
Bye.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys are interested in getting Uma Sofia's book, The White Jaguar, we will have everything in the description on all our socials. And where do all the proceedings go to?
Yeah, so the proceeds of the book do get split evenly towards the Lotus Petal Foundation and also the World Wildlife Fund, because most, if not all, of the animals that I put in the story are endangered. So
Nice.
Wow, just like layers upon layers with this book. I feel like we're
I
peeling
wanted
back
to make
an
it
onion.
intentional, you know? Like,
Yeah. I
No,
love
you
it.
you have.
thank you.
You definitely have. And we love animals over here.
Yes,
Oh,
we
yeah?
We're big
do.
animal
That's one of
people.
our main causes at the Institute is animal welfare.
Wow,
So
okay.
we do a lot of like collaboration with other nonprofits and grassroots who are fighting for legislation, you know, to protect animals.
I love that.
Yeah, we Senator Lesniak has been the face of like so many animal welfare bills. He's the reason why elephants aren't allowed to be used in circuses anymore in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And
Wonderful.
we're actually working with a coalition of people to try to ban puppy mills, which is basically where
Such
they
a huge
breed
problem here.
dogs, you know, basically until they can't, once they can't breed anymore, they just kind of toss them.
Yeah,
And the
I know.
puppies are malnourished, barely any food, barely any water.
That's a
so.
really big problem in New Jersey and Pennsylvania too, but like in this
Yeah.
area.
Yep. They banned it in New York, so all the New York breeders are coming here now. So we're trying to like
Yeah.
really push that, but
Maybe we could do something together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
we would love to.
So moving like kind of in the direction of, you know, your current roles and everything and what you're going to be doing in the future, let's talk about the Breaking Barriers Conference. You are being awarded the Educational Trailblazer Keystone Award this year.
Yeah, honestly, I was so honored when I got the email. I again, like it makes a difference when people do recognize the hard work that you're doing, and that's what I like to do for others too. So I just am always very appreciative because someone took the time out of their day, and that someone is Jeremiah Laporte. Love him and his work with the Breaking Barriers Conference. Still so grateful. Like, you know, a year ago, I went to the first Breaking Barriers Conference, and it's an incredible networking event, first of all, and just so many inspiring people that, you know, it's like everyone's uplifting everyone. I love attending events like that because it doesn't feel like a competition. It feels like a genuine, you know, activists get together and try to make the world a better place, which, you know, you don't see a lot of that nowadays. So it's really nice. And I'm honestly just very honored because this is like a step forward in, you know, creating that message and amplifying it, that all kids should get education and have a right to, you know, explore their interests and, you know, live in fantasy worlds like Percy Jackson. You know, like every kid deserves that, and it means a lot that the Breaking Barriers Conference is standing for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. We met you at last year's
Yes,
Breaking
we
Barrier
did.
Conference, so that's how we know Uma Sofia. So it was like really cool to see you, you know, be a keynote speaker.
Thank you.
Last year, and it's going to be really amazing to see you get this award this year. We're
Thank
very
you so
excited
much.
for it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. The Lesniak Institute helped a lot last year.
Yes.
And we're going to like commit to it again this year because it was so powerful. And
It really was.
one of the things that I really liked about it was like it was like ran by students for students.
Yes.
And it was people from all walks of life too. Like anything you could have thought of, that's what was discussed. Mental health, you know, like local politics. There was even like a very interesting dance that was very activist based, like against, I believe it was like gun violence. Yeah.
Gun violence.
So, you know, just it shows that, you know, there's still people in this world who are like fighting every day for the causes that they care about.
Yeah. And registration's open for the Breaking Barriers Conference
it is.
2025. So
That'll also be in the description below.
yes.
It's in May, guys. Clear your schedules.
Yes.
So you're a senior in high school.
Yes.
Um,
Crazy. Just doesn't feel real.
That is crazy. But you're also the founder and co-chair of your school's diversity and inclusion campaign.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that started
Yeah.
and what got you into that?
So all my life I had gone to public school up until I transferred my sophomore year. And something that I say is, you know, and this is like a key learning moment for me, is you can't heal in the same place that you were hurt. And I bring that up a lot because, you know, when I was younger, and I'm still like very young, but like, you know,
Younger.
I kind of believe that, you know, like quitting something was running away, and I would often stay in situations like friendships or, you know, like my school environment that wasn't healthy for me, and I would still like put pressure on myself to overachieve when I really wasn't happy and I felt very isolated. So I think like a lot of kids feel that way. And so when I, you know, it was the beginning of my sophomore year, it was a month in, and it was like the same story. I was like, something needs to change, and it's not going to be in my environment, so I have to make a change. So I ended up transferring to an all-girls school. And it's about 200 of us. There's only 60 girls in my grade, very small. And I feel like the problem was not that the girls at that school were so welcoming when I was there. I transferred and I immediately felt like included, and it was a really great feeling because I never felt like that in my old school. But I feel like this is not just my school thing. This is a general thing. There's a lack of education about, you know, not even other cultures, but there's like, we live in a very ethnocentric culture right now. And, you know, I made a friend who, she had been adopted from China, and she like agreed with me that, you know, there was very little representation at our school, and like talks about it, other than like, you know, the occasional Martin Luther King Day speech, you know, like there needs to be more of an effort put in. And we realized that there was a gap, and so we filled that gap. And so sophomore year, we decided to start this club. It had 5 people, and now it has 30, and it's not all seniors. So we have like just many generations to come. That's and awesome. We're hosting our elections for the next year now, and you know, to see like even that like on a school level versus like, you know, national level, but like to have that impact in my school. And now this club used to be a thing 10 years ago, and then it died because no one was like actively contributing it. But to revive this club and then know that, you know, we have sophomores, juniors, freshmen who are interested and who will keep like living this legacy has been really impactful. And we actually, I think the most impactful thing about it was, you know, at the end of this last school year, we decided we really need to make a statement because, you know, I noticed we have a lot of teachers and students that, you know, either come from a different background, or teachers that come like were born in a different country and came to this country and have like a strong accent, or just like a different way of being. And, you know, there's not so nice things being said about those teachers or those students. And I realized that. And the thing is, like, there's either people who are complacent or who are part of that. And if you don't know what's going on, then how can you like be a part of fixing the problem? So we had this anonymous letter writing campaign where teachers and students alike wrote anonymous letters to the DSU. We had permission to read the ones that were starred. So we read them over, and we picked really impactful letters to then read in a school assembly. And the reactions that we got were like, wow, I didn't know this was happening, or like, this is not okay. And I genuinely have noticed like a difference now coming back to this school year. There's like a lot less complaints about, you know, racially motivated things and microaggressions. And to know that that will carry on, even if it's just for the rest of the year, or that, you know, like I have a group of students that I trust will do something like that again, and will create that atmosphere and that safe place for people like me who, you know, we're not any different than anyone. It's just that like, you just have to be accepting that someone comes from a different place than you did and has a different upbringing than you did. But that doesn't mean that you're like not a person or not the same human being, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I love that you have different levels of your advocacy. Like, you do stuff on a national level, on a local level, and now at like just your school level. That's really impressive.
Thank you so much.
What would you say to students right now, whether they're in high school, middle school, college? What would you say to them to help them get involved?
I would say like, don't say no to anything. Like, obviously not in other contexts of your life. Definitely like stand your ground and say no if you don't agree with something. But if it's something like positive, just go for it. For example, like obviously like my main focus is education, right? And you know, Lotus Petal does healthcare and nutrition too. But you know, when I was Miss Teen USA, there used to be a partnership with a organization called Smile Train, and they provide free cleft palate surgeries to kids all around the globe. And I got really involved with them. I had the opportunity to go on an amazing trip to Cabo, Mexico, and go to these kids' houses and speak with these children who have received the free cleft palate surgery. And it was just life-changing for me. I was actually able to give them each their own copy of the White Jaguar, and you know, like they like read them in Spanish and read at the hospital in all the 4 languages. And it really just, the message transcends like just the language barrier. And I could speak Spanish, so it was great like to go down to Mexico and speak Spanish with the kids. But like, it just, you never know where your main passion can intersect with others. And now, like, just this past weekend, I was at the Smile Train High School Ambassador Conference, and I think there might be an exciting partnership between Lotus Petal and Smile Train just because of that, like, convergence of, I decided to stick with it. And so even if, something's tangential to, like, what you think you might be interested in, if you're still making a difference, and if you realize that you can actually put those things together, I always say that, like, a bigger network is always better because you have more people to talk about the issue and more people to care. And then, like, why not help out another person, while they're helping you? I'm big on that, like, at school too. Like, I always do team ups with, me and Cheng Li, my co-chair, we always do, like, team ups with other clubs at schools, like the GSA, like the Gay Straight Alliance, and just like the National Honor Society or the Spanish Honor Society, because it's important to foster that community and realize that we're working towards the same goal, no matter whether it be like education, healthcare, etc. Like, we're still working to make the world a better place.
So your overall kind of, like, advice is to really build that community of people that, have those same passions as you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Taking that leap, right?
Yes,
into,
definitely.
like, what you're interested in and what you're passionate about.
I think that message specifically has been coming up a lot in our office lately because our interns right now are, going to host a women's health and wellness event at the beginning of April. And their whole idea for this is the community aspect of it, because oftentimes when you talk about health and wellness, it's very solitary. It's like, here's what you can do for your mental health.
Especially for women.
So this is really about building a community and, talking about how can you improve mental health in a community aspect. So I think that's really cool that's kind of your advice. We've been talking a lot about it.
Yeah, we so our interns, we gave them, like, a really cool project this year where we kind of gave them the freedom to choose on what they want to work on and what we wanted them to host, like a service event or some sort of movement, and they all decided to women's health and wellness. That's what they wanted to focus on. And our role at the Institute is to give them the resources and the connections that they need, but they're really the ones, kind of like the Breaking Barriers conference, they're the ones, like,
to push it forward.
They're the ones pushing it forward. They're the ones getting the questions ready for the panelists, and they're the ones, organizing the whole event. So we're really excited for that, that is on April 4th.
Yes, at Kane University.
And we're really excited to see how that turns out. And I think we're discussing a topic that's a little taboo. I know, like, I'm not a woman, obviously, but
No.
From my, like, discussions and just overhearing conversations, it seems like there is sort of, like, a taboo in women's health, especially, like, in healthcare.
For sure.
I'm really looking forward to dig, like, deep into that.
Yeah, especially because right now it's Women's History Month. So organizing this campaign and having our interns reach out to the people they want to come speak at the event and really thinking about how they impact the community and different areas that we can talk about. It's been a cool project that we've been, like, overseeing with them and that they've been bringing to the Institute.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. I'm just glad that I could, like, be in the same breath as all of that. I'm like inspired by you guys, really, truly.
Well, we're inspired by you.
Thank you.
We gotta get our resume up now.
Oh my gosh, stop.
No, I think the work that you're doing is really important. And I think that you will influence so many lives, like younger generations. So just keep doing what you're doing. Looking forward to that second book in the future.
Yeah, you know what? I'm like really thinking about it. It's definitely like the idea is there. I think like I'll give you guys a sneak peek. So now that Nieve has made her friends and accepted who you are, it's difficult sometimes to find your purpose. So I think the second book, that I would write would definitely be about finding your purpose.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not a child anymore, but I'd love to read that.
I like to say it's for all ages because I think I went. I was at this one event and there were a lot of like the teachers decide, like sometimes they leave the classroom, sometimes they stay in the classroom depending on like the age group. But there was a lady who had just emigrated from India recently, and there is, the book has like 4 languages like you mentioned. So when I got to the Hindi part, she came to me and she like was crying and she was like, I wish I had this book growing up, because it's so hard even now, like at my age, to like make this transition. And so that's why, you know, that's also another thing I realized, like this message, no matter if it's in the children's book format, like sometimes it takes something as simple as that to really get the point across. Because like, you know, we think that everything needs to be complex nowadays, but we have to like talk to that, I guess, inner child in ourselves. And you know, this book, like I like to say, healed like the little girl that was hurt because she didn't feel like she belonged. So I hope to do that for, you know, adults and kids who can realize that, you know, they have something special.
Well, we want to thank you so much for stopping by. I know this is not the last time we'll see you. We're going to see you again at the Breaking Barriers conference. And I'm sure the Lesniak Institute and Uma Sofia will have a lot to talk about in the future. Would you like to share anything with our audience before we go?
Sure. I mean, I know you, Claudia, had asked me like if I had one piece of advice, but I just want to say like keep being yourself, because I know that's like the most cliche piece of advice, but it's so true, and that's why it's said so much. I really like the times where I have felt like hiding myself and who I am. Like the quality of life is just not the same as if I were to embrace what really does make me different and special. And don't let anyone make you feel like you don't have a place in this world, because you can create your own places. That's what you have, you know, your passions for. That's what you have like the people that will understand you one day for. So just keep holding on to that.
Preach.
Thank you.
That's facts. Well,